Good afternoon, YouTube world. This is Matthew again, and as I promised you when I started out last week, I'll be bringing you video reviews of all of my tech purchases. My most recent purchase has just been delivered this morning by a lovely gentleman from Overclockers. This is the NZXT Phantom 820 in gunmetal grey. Now this is currently one of the top end cases coming from NZXT. It's a very striking case. The coloration I personally find excellent, and it has an awful lot of features that we're going to go through during this review. First off, you'll notice the door on this product. Very nice, good opening action to the right, and the magnets do hold this lovely and securely. You can also see just down here, the light is not brilliant, there's an SD card reader. Get a better picture of that for you there. And you can also see several controls which are for the LED illumination in this case, which we will go into in more detail when we open the case up and get to that part of the review. Now, I'll just finish the nice sweeping shot of this case so you can get a good look at what it looks like. So it is gunmetal grey. It's a very nice colour as far as I'm concerned. Very industrial, doesn't look too plasticky, which I know is something that has been levelled at NZXT in the past. Now, in terms of what you've got externally here in terms of controls, you do have a built-in fan controller with this device. Now, I'm told this is a 4-channel fan controller. We'll confirm that when we get the case open in a minute. You then have a reset button just here, and you have the power button here. You also have a headphone jack and a microphone jack, again, all placed conveniently on top of the case, as opposed to behind the door, which is a complaint I would often level at cases nowadays, is it's of no practical benefit to put those features behind the door, because hopefully you're going to have the door closed. Now on the top here, you can see that we have 4 USB 2 ports and 2 USB 3s. At the top here, you have a nice big 200mm fan. And we'll just come around to the back just to finish off the signal about the exterior. And you have a 140mm fan here, 9 expansion slots, room for your power supply at the bottom, and also another internal fan filter. That finishes the exterior, and we'll move inside shortly. Okay, and we're back. Just to pick up on a few more of the exterior features that I think I'd been remiss in not giving you to begin with. The rear fan is unusual in this form of case design, in as much as you can see these runners here are effectively the slotted gaps that it fits into. Now you can move the fan up and down to be in line, or more closely in line, with your CPU cooler. This is certainly not a design feature I've seen elsewhere before, but it is a very good feature as far as I'm concerned, as this will allow you to more closely line your airflow, and should you be quite old school in some respects, you could even use this to make a very interesting duct system, which used to be used a fair bit a couple of years ago, but doesn't seem to really happen nowadays. If we move down the back of the case, you have 4 rubber grommets. Obviously this enables for very easy external water cooling tubing routing. Is that used so much anymore? I'm not sure. Comment on the channel to let me know your guys' thoughts on this. As I said before, upstairs here we do have a nice big fan. I think it's 200 or 220mm. In this case it's 200 mils, but there is also room for radiators in this case. In fact, it's not a bad case at all for water cooling by all respects, which you'll see when we get inside. The case also includes support for eATX boards, so it is a very well specified case in that respect. There's also provisions for a 280 or 360mm rad up top, and a 240 or 280mm radiator at the base of the chassis. Plenty of dust filters on this as well. There are spring-loaded front and rear covers. I'm just going to try and come around the front now, and I'll probably lie the case down just to do this part, because it's an awful lot easier with it on its side. just to pop the filter out. Now just here you can see, I'll just do that again because I think I may have missed it. There's a indent here. You push it and ping, out comes a nice big filter, which will give you lots of filtration at the front of the case, which is obviously where the majority of the air and dust is going to be pulled into. Equally on the back here, in fact you can see the filter far more easily on the back. There's a big filter right behind where the power supply would be, or underneath, sorry. And you can see again, slides out nice and easy, but does have a nice spring-loaded action. I'm now going to move on to the interiors of the case. Another thing to note just here is this very, very big foot at the front of the case, which also follows around onto the contour onto the rear feet, which appear to be made of rubber, as well as these big rubber bits here to help isolate the case from the floor. So having a big foot on it like that does also give you a lots of air clearance underneath. So if you had it on a carpeted floor, for example, you would be able to get sufficient airflow out of it. Looking down on the side of the case now, you do have these, you've got a window up here which would show off roughly where your CPU is going to sit. You can clearly see the 200mm top fan just there where I'm pointing, and the 140mm fan at the back there. These are all included as standard with the case. There is also a 200mm fan situated just behind here. So I'm now going to open the case up so we can get a picture of the internals. I apologise for the lack of focus just there. Right. Now the rear of the case, or the side of the cases, are opened with thumb screws. And you do need to lift the case up just slightly just to get it to come out of its groove for when you want to remove it. This can be a bit of a challenge sometimes. So I'll get the side of the case off now, and then we'll come back and we'll do the review of the interior. Okay, and we're back. So we're now going to move on to the interior section of this case review. Just to start with, this is the side, of the case that would allow you to show off your hardware, etc. And it also has the NZXT 200mm side fan to give additional cooling to your video card, etc. As you can see, nice NZXT branded 200mm fans, and the interior side panel of the case is as pretty as I've come to expect from NZXT over the past couple of years. Now this gives you a much clearer indication of what we're talking about inside. You can see the pre-populated 200mm fan mount at the top, and the pre-populated 140mm fan at the back, and you can see quite clearly the 9 expansion slots. You can also see from the video that there are a number of rubber grommeted access ports. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think 9 or 10 of these, so plenty of room to route your cables neatly, so you can hopefully produce a very pretty, sweetly cabled build. You can also see just here a very large CPU cutout area, so if you're an enthusiast who regularly changes out their CPU cooler or anything of that nature that requires constant access to the back panel, there's plenty of room for you to do there, and I wouldn't foresee there being any huge problems around that. So moving on to the front here, you can see the hard disk caddy areas. You can see this particular one here. This will enable you to mount 2 hard drives or 2 SSDs. They're on little slidable caddies, which we'll pull out in a minute just to show you what they look like. And then you have a much larger section up here, which would enable you to house an additional 1, 2, 3, I believe 4. There is also this here, which is a fan mount, which enables you to mount an additional fan and direct the flow towards your hot running hardware. And from the position of the of that mount, you can see it would mainly be targeting the first 2 or 3 PCI Express or PCI slots, and this would enable the relevant additional cooling for your hot running video cards. Or if you were running an SLI configuration, I can imagine it would also do very, very well for that. As you move up to the top here, you can obviously see the 5¼ inch bays. There are 4 of those, which are externally accessible as well, as I showed in the exterior shot. We're now going to move round to the back end of the case itself. So I'll just stand him up so you can see what we're talking about on the back side, because the back side is actually surprisingly busy. As you can see here, there are a lot of cables already in a non-populated system. Now there is a reason for this. The reason is actually quite simple. Because you have all of these pre-populated fan mounts, you'd normally be thinking to yourself, well, I've got to have a motherboard that's got 4 fan connectors on it, probably 5 once you take your CPU into consideration. Now in this instance, NZXT have thought about this because, as I said during the exterior portion of the review, there is an integrated fan controller. Now as you can see here, in fact, I'll make it quite, there you go, you can see them here. There are fan connectors already pre-populated there, ready for you to plug the installed fans into, which is an excellent feature. I mean, this is something that I have on my Fractal Define XLR2, which I will also be reviewing very shortly. Now the XLR2's implementation is nice. It's run down the back of the motherboard just like this is, but it does have one problem in comparison to this case. But it is a fairly serious one. With this case, you can get to the fan controller with the door closed. With the Fractal Define XLR2, you have to have that open. If you do not have it open, you cannot get to it. So for most people, or a lot of people, if you're like me, where you will have this device situated under your desk, I don't want to have to open the door to get to that control. I want to be able to reach down, turn those fans off so that I can enjoy relative silence coming from my PC. This is especially useful if you're going to be watching movies or something like that. You might want to just dial those fans back and just say, no, I really want to enjoy my movie. With this fan controller, you can actually turn the fans all the way off at the lowest setting, at least with the stock fans. I don't know if you had a third-party fan, if they would also spin down. That would be obviously dependent on the voltages. Now, next on the back side, as I said we'd get to, these are the caddies to hold your hard drives and or SSDs. They're plastic caddies. So they're not metal ones, as is now turning up with a lot of manufacturers. Certainly my Fractal Define's caddies are made of metal, but in most terms I'm not that worried about that, because a lot of the structural rigidity you're going to get is going to come from what you put into it anyway. So I'm not as worried about that as you might imagine. So we'll just slide him back on in there now, like so, and he clips in quite nicely, just like that. And he's not going anywhere until you clip him out like so. So not as worried about that as you may imagine. Also comes with an 8-pin black extension cable. This is very, very valuable if you have a power supply that just doesn't have a cable that's long enough. Also from the back end here, obviously you can see just how big that CPU cooler cutout is. It is humongous. However, it provides no issues with stability in terms of the case, as it is rigid, it is solid. You know, this is a steel case with some quite nice plastic shelling on it. It's certainly not a nasty, cheap looking piece of tat, which I've certainly seen some knockoffs of the NZXT cases over the years. And although they've looked quite nice, I've always found them to be lacking when it comes to the material and the build quality. Now that obviously is the back of the case, so I'm just going to go on just to give you a few more pieces of information about this case. One of the other things I was thinking about when I did this review was the power supply and the cabling situation inside. Now if we come down just in here, you can see where the power supply is going to sit. Let's move those cables out of the way. There are 6 nicely positioned rubber feet here to help isolate your power supply so you don't get much vibration off of it, and also help keep it up off of the ground, so your power supply has plenty of room to pull in the fresh air that it needs to maintain its ideal temperatures. Now also something which is, it's a little thing in case design, but this is something I like to see in my cases. I like to see these little things. I'm just going to see if I can get a good picture of it here, which it looks like I'll be able to. You'll be able to see they have got on the bare metal inside an A, a U, an M, an F, a C and an E. Now this all tells you where to place the standoffs when you mount your motherboard. Now this is not a big thing, you know, to most people. If you've ever built a PC before, then you know you're going to know to lay it out before you get in there and start putting your standoffs out and screwing them in. However, if you're somebody new coming into this, you know, that could be, you know, a really big thing, because it saves you having to go looking and go and, you know, and putting a standoff in the wrong place and then really having to start from scratch again. I'm just going to give you a bit of a shot at the top as well. There's your big 200mm fan. There's your gap for another one. And that is very dark picture, is the insides of the drive bays, etc. Now that's pretty much it for the review of this case. As I said, I'll be getting this one up with you guys very shortly. In a couple of hours or maybe tomorrow, I'll also be putting up my review of the Fractal Divine XLR2, which is another case that I have hanging around here that I think you know, needs a good review, just so that you guys can fully appreciate what we're talking about here. One of the other features it'd be remiss of me to point out here is the fact that this lower bay just here with these push tabs can be removed, just as you can see I'm doing there, to enable you to fit that larger radiator on the bottom. And also just in the side, you can just about see the white fins of the fan. There is also that 200mm fan on the front there. If you guys have any questions about this review, about this case, anything of that nature, please hit me up and leave them in the comments. Other than that, please click subscribe on my channel and like if this was any help to you. And if you have any questions, thoughts or comments, please do let me know, as I'm always looking for feedback to enable me to improve this for you guys. The other standout feature on this case, before I let you go, however, you can just see part of it here, is the light strips. Now a lot has been made about the ability of this case to illuminate its strips and to give you a really, you know, a really interesting looking light show effectively with this case. That is what these extra buttons here are all about. Inside here, these will actually enable you to change your LEDs. You can turn them off, you can turn them on, you can change the mode, you can even change the hue of the actual lights. Now, I'm not entirely sure if this is a good thing or a bad thing yet. I can certainly see the appeal to some people. To me, maybe 5 years ago, I would have been really excited about that sort of feature. Nowadays, it goes very much on the meh, I'm not that worried side of things, as I think there are more practical things that I'd like to see in a case nowadays. Like these quick releases on the 5 1/4 inches. They're very big, they're very sturdy, and they work really well. I also like the I/O on this case, having all of the I/O on the top, or at least 99% of the I/O with the exception of the SD card reader, which is down behind the door on top. For me, is absolutely brilliant, because there's no more scrabbling around behind to try and find a USB port to plug a mouse into, or a memory stick. So for me, it's a really good thing. As I said before, any questions about the case, anything else you want me to look at or say, please guys do let me know. If not, click like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much.